cloud. And there we go. Welcome and good morning. Happy Saturday morning. Thank you for joining in early for our Zoom mini crop. Today we're going to be playing with Distress Oxides. And I've got my blending brushes, but if you've got your foams, those work as well. I think I've got mine over here in my little case from last night. So any of these same tools will work just fine for what we're going to do today. You also need, you need a little mister of some sort with water in it, because we're going to use that as a stencil. So today I'm going to be using a stencil from Echo Park. We've just gotten in a bunch of new stencils from Echo Park that have some really cool patterns and will work, exceptionally well for this technique. The one I'm probably going to use today is this one, which is the cloud and the moon and the stars. It works obviously well for baby, which is what it was designed for, but you could use it for someone who's maybe graduating and you want to wish them luck or wish them their dreams. We've got this one here, which is just a random pattern, but we've also got starfish. We've got, of course, pineapples. It looks like I'm on a little bit of a lag, so please bear with me if I'm talking ahead of what I'm showing. This one has confetti. We've got fireworks. And we've got some more patterns and some leaves. And if you're doing something tropical, you've got waves. These kites are super fun as well. You could do some really fun stuff with for birthdays, or again, this would be a great baby technique. Stars, and then from Hero Arts, we've got these two as well. Sorry, is someone asking a question? No, okay, I think we're all good. So we've got these mandala guys as well. So to start with, we are going to start, so I want you to pick 3 colors of your oxide inks that work together. And we're going to create just some basic backgrounds with our ink blending. And what we're going to work towards is creating something like this, where it's got a fun textured pattern to it using the stencil. But the key is we're not using the stencil to put the ink on. We're going to put the ink on first, and then I'm going to show you what to do with that stencil. So grab a piece of just your regular white cardstock. And my little glass tray is missing a foot, so I'm a little rocky here, but bear with me. I've got my plain white paper. I am going to use sapphire, peacock feather, and the brand new speckled egg. Now, I will say I am using oxides today, and that's how I learned the technique. I would think from a theoretical standpoint that if you were just using the regular Distress ink, that this technique would also work, but I have not tried it. So if you only have Distress ink, definitely give it a try, and we will see what happens. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is my speckled egg, and my blending brush, and I'm going to blend.
Yeah.
So I'm giving my brush a good scrub in the ink.
Okay.
And I'm just going to start off my page, and blend onto my cardstock here, and you're going to just do the bottom third of your page. And then this blending area. Keep blending it around. And you do want a generous amount of ink on here because the technique we're going to do, you want a good reaction. So don't be stingy. Ink it all up. I'm just going to check something here. There we go. So because I only have 2 brushes for blue. I'm going to scrub this off on my scrap paper till it goes pretty clean, because I'm going to use it for my second color as well, which is the peacock feathers. If you have a separate one, go for it. It does not need to be the same one. I'm going to scrub it in again. And this time I'm just going to do the middle third. And blend in those colors, overlap on that line. Get that beautiful blend going on. And what I learned last night, because it's been a while since I've done some blending, when I first started blending last night, I was pushing really hard. I was pushing really hard to try and get good coverage and everything else. And I found that the more I eased up, the better blend that I got. So don't feel like you need to be forcing it through the table. Just do a nice light circular blend. And I can even go back. So I'm just cleaning off my brush, get some more of that speckled eggs, because I want to soften up this middle edge here. But the softer and the lighter you go, you're going to have a much better time blending with it. You can go back and forth. If you need to make your colors more intense, you can add more layers. But if you try to push hard, the paper is actually going to fight you. Now I'm going to switch to my blue brush for my chipped sapphire. And just because I find it easier, I'm going to flip it around so that I can do this bottom third. So I'm just going to start off the page again and just start blending. Get some more ink. And you can see how the more ink you add, the more times you go over it, the more intense your color gets. And you may need to do it a few times to get that intensity that you want. But that circular motion can actually be quite relaxing. You can gain a Zen blending state. And you can see I am just overlapping that color there. I'm going to go back, get a little bit more peacock feather just to soften up this overlap line there. And there you have it. So there you've got a nice blended piece of paper. And I'm just using Neenah cardstock, so I'm not using anything really particular for this technique. I'm just going to move it off to the side a little bit because now I'm going to get my stencil. And actually, maybe I'll just slide my paper sideways a little bit just because I want to stay clear of the messy area. All right, so now I have my stencil. And as you know, most stencils are made of like a, I don't want to say acetate, but it's a plastic. And so the plastic will resist water. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our mister. And I want to try and do this on camera, but I don't want to get it everywhere. So let me move that just for now. You can do yours off to the side. I'm going to try and do mine here. Let's make sure that my mister is actually working. Yep. And it might be hard to see on camera because, you know, water's clear. But what you want to do is you want to mist the entire surface of your stencil. And you want to give it a generous mist. It is going to bead up. It is going to sit on the surface. You don't want to get it to the point that it's drippy, but you want a really good coating of water on your stencil. And you should have your paper towel handy as well because we're going to need that in a second. So I'm just going to get mine ready. So I've just got one piece of white paper towel. Let me pick this up again. I'm going to give it a really good mist. Where'd my hole go? Really good mist. Then I'm going to take my blended paper and I'm going to put the water side down right onto my surface. And just using my paper towel, I'm going to gently press and blot. So that's going to get rid of any excess. The longer you let it sit there, the more that that water is going to react with your ink. Because as you know, Distress inks and Distress oxides are designed to react with water. That is their primary purpose. So we're just letting it sit there for a second. And if all has gone well, our piece is going to look like this one. So cross your fingers. Cross your toes. Let's see what happens. Whoa. Now I can see here where I have maybe didn't have enough water or didn't put enough pressure down at the bottom, but you can see how the water has reacted with the ink to create that ghosted look to it. Did everybody else's work out well? Do I have lots of thumbs up? So that's really all that the technique is. We're stamping with our stencil, but instead of using ink, we're using water. So then I'm just gonna, you know what, just for fun, let's do a second one and let's do a different color scheme just so we can see if it works again. So I'm gonna set that off to the side and let it dry a little bit. Let me grab another piece of cardstock. Where did my cardstock go? Here it is. So when I was playing around last night, another color combination that I really fell in love with was this one here. This is speckled egg, carved pumpkin, and rusty hinge in the middle. This is a beautiful fall combination. I know we're not even close to fall yet, but you know, we're already sometimes thinking about that stuff. It almost looks like a beautiful sunset that you could do a nice silhouette. Hey, even a palm tree silhouette would look nice onto that card. So let me grab, I've got my yellow, my orange, and my brown, and I need my blue back. So here we go, rusty hinge, carved pumpkin, and speckled egg. And my workspace is getting crowded. So this time I'm going to start with the carved pumpkin. And I'm going to, oh, you've lost my screen. Someone's trying to call me. Decline. There we go. I'm back. Hooray. All right. So I'm going to ink up my carved pumpkin this time. Start off my edge. And let's create a nice blend. Let me move this down just a little bit. Maybe that'll. Get that zoom in, zoomed in. Excellent. Make some space. I'll move up. I'm assuming since there are no questions, everybody's doing great. So if you do have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask if I'm doing something that you don't understand or if I'm going too fast. But I'm just doing a light blend here and just building up my layers of the color.
Sheri?
Yes.
Can I ask, what is the difference between Distress Oxide and Distress ink?
Absolutely. That is an excellent question and one I get asked quite a bit. So when Tim first came out with his inks, the Distress ink came out first. It is 100% water-based dye ink, but it is specially formulated to react with water. You will find that the Distress inks are more translucent. So they are a softer color. They are meant to do different techniques so that you can see things coming through it because they have that translucence to it. Distress Oxide, on the other hand, is a water-based dye pigment hybrid. So it's got two different kinds of ink mixed into one. These ones are designed to be more opaque. So you will see a lot more vibrancy of color. And I've stamped with actually both inks. I have stamped with Distress ink. I have stamped with Oxide ink. Personally, I don't like stamping with Distress ink. It's too soft. And I found I needed to use my platform and stamp it 5 or 6 times before I got any intensity of color. Whereas the Oxide, you can actually use it just like a pigmented ink to stamp on dark papers, or if you just want a really intense color on a lighter color paper. Because the Oxide does have some pigment in it, that's why you'll find, like, if you rub it, it does feel a little bit almost chalky. And you will, if you're stamping with it, you will want to let it dry for a couple of seconds. Just be aware that it's not an instant dry like a regular water-based ink would be. That you can do a lot of the same techniques that you can with Distress ink, but you will get a different look. So when an oxide reacts with water, let me just grab, just because I'm working on this one. So if I just take this and my mister, which is now buried, so I've just given that a really light spritz. See if I can just drop some droplets on here to show you. Running low on water here. But you can see, just even as this is reacting, I'll see if I can get it close. Let's dab it. You get that white look to it where the water was. That's the ink oxidizing, if you will. So if you think almost like it's rusting, it's that water is reacting with the ink to create that ghosted look. So hopefully that covers the main differences between the oxides. I think if maybe a couple of weeks ago we had posted a video on social talking about the differences. I'll see if I can find it again and bump it up so that you guys can see it again. Tim Holt does a lot of different things. That hybrid formulation as well is why we have yet to see oxides in the mini inks. Right now, the only mini inks are in the Distress ink, because when they keep trying, and they've been trying for the 2-3 years since the oxide has been out, to formulate it enough so that when it goes down to a small pad, it stays stable and doesn't break down. They haven't been successful with that yet, which is why you will only ever find the oxide in a large pad.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a lot of fun though. I actually prefer the oxides because I am a bolder color person. I like doing, I like having that intensity of color, but it becomes a personal preference and it depends on your project. All right, so I'm gonna come back here to blending out my background. So now I'm gonna take my rusty hinge. Don't wanna lose my spray bottle, so I'm gonna put that over there. All right, let's get some rusty hinge in here. So again, starting off the page and just blending it on nice and light, no hard pressure, and just building up my intensity of color with lots of layers. I do find this stencil stamping technique does work better with the darker colors because you do get that more contrast. You can see on this one here, we're in the dark. You can see it a lot better than you can in the light. But again, when you see it up close, you can see that ghosting going on. All right. All right, I like that so far. And now let's pop the lid back on. I'm going over to my speckled egg. Speckled egg. I'm particularly drawn to the speckled egg right now, not only because it's new, but because if you haven't heard me talk about it, we've got baby robins in our windowsill at home. And so we've seen them all the way from when the eggs were laid in the nest through now. We've got 4 little baby robins. They've just opened their eyes. They're covered in feathers now, and we're just waiting for the day that we don't see them anymore, and it'll be very sad because it's I call it now that I watch the bird channel. I sit at my window and just watch the birds. All right, so there we go. There we have our second blended background. This time I'm going to take this hashed pattern to it. I believe it's a travel one, but it's a really just nice multi-purpose. I'm going to get my paper towel handy. I'm going to do this off screen just so I can give it a really good spritz. Just spray, and you be as generous as you can be without it literally dripping down your arm. Get lots of good spray. water side down. And it's one of those things that once it's down, don't try to move it because it will change the effect. Just gonna dab out and rub all over so that it all sticks down and reacts with what's underneath. We'll let it sit just for a minute here. And you know what? I've done this tri-blend here. You do not have to. If you have an absolute favorite color of ink, do your whole background in that ink and then create that pattern look with the stencil stamp. Now, just to show you, and this is one that I did last night, because I started thinking about this. It's like, well, how is this different than using the stamp or the stencil just for ink? So this is just using that stencil, the same color combination, but using it as a stencil. So you get lots of that white background and the color is popping out. It is a little bit more vibrant and a little bit in your face, but maybe that's too much for what you're looking for. Then when you do the stamp or the stencil stamping, you still have the intensity of color, but you've got that background and it creates that just really subtle look to it. So it's just a completely different look using the same tools. And you know what? We always want to find ways to get more from the tools that we've got. All right, I've had this sitting and reacting. Let's see. Ta-da! So there you go. So that's our technique for the day. I'm going to go back to my first one just because it's probably dry now. That with all that water, it is a little bit damp, so I would suggest you either give it a quick blast with the heat gun, or let it sit just for a few seconds. I'm going to come back to my moon and my stars, and I'm just going to turn it into a really, really simple but impactful card. So I'm going to trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4, so that it's a little bit more narrow than my card base. So let's go down to 4. And because I didn't do so great on that one end, I'm going to do that. I'm going to trim that side off so nobody sees my boo-boos. And I'm going to grab, I've got a piece of navy blue that I'm going to trim down to that card base size, the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so that I can layer them together. Now, before I start assembling, I want to do some stamping. So I have this stamp here. It's the Wish stamp from Photoplay. Their Say It With Stamp line. So I'm going to, you know what, I think I might turn it this way so that when I put my stamp down, it's really going to stand out. And this one has lots of little sayings. So close your eyes and make a wish. Your heart makes a wish. Sealed with a wish. Wish upon a star. So you can create a nice little sentiment here on your stamp or on your card. So there's my block. My wish. And I'm going to put it a little bit higher on my block because I'm going to use that wish upon a star. So wish, I'm going to tuck upon a star just underneath. Now again, because you can use oxide ink for stamping, if that's all you've got to work with right now, you can stamp your sentiment right on here with your oxide ink, but I'm going to use my VersaFine Clair Twilight just because I love the intensity of the color on this when I'm stamping. So I'm just going to do my little stamp right down here. Oh, my words didn't come out. All right. That's what I get for trying to do it twice, or do 2 steps at once. Let me put that on here and try my upon a star again. And bear with me, I need to cover up that little R, so if you see my head, I apologize. There we go. Wish upon a star. I will clean that off later.
Sheri, I'm curious, what would happen if you used watercolor paper?
If you use watercolor
Paper.
paper, you know what? That's a good question because I actually pulled some water paper color out to try. So let's finish our card and then we'll give it a try and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Because there's a couple of different things I can show you with the watercolor paper as well. So let's just quickly finish this guy up. I do want to add one more thing to this before I stick it down onto my card base. If you just didn't see it on Wednesday, we got in this fabulous color wheel ink pad from Vicki Booten, and they are all like these really cool metallic colors. And what you do is you open it up, and each little pad is kind of its own little pie shape. So I'm going to take the silver out of that and just use it to distress my edges, just to give it a little bit more shine. If I had a little star stamp, which I know I do somewhere in my stash, I might even go in and fill in the star. But there you go, you can just then slide. And I always struggle with this, but it's just because I'm not coordinated. There we go, that goes back in. Oh, don't put your thumb in it. All right, so now I'm just gonna assemble my card. Oh, get the tape runner the right way. Attach it here onto the navy. And then put it on my card base. And you've got a beautiful background savvy card. People are going to say, how did you do that? And you're going to say, I'm just awesome that way. But just in a few simple steps. You don't need a lot of layers. You don't need a lot of extra techniques and doodads. That could be really simple. I think maybe the one other thing I might do is, if I were to do it again, I might put a little piece of silver ribbon across it. But just look how pretty and sophisticated and simple that is. So back to our question about the watercolor paper. Let's give it a try. I am going to grab, let's pick a different color just for fun. I am going to grab abandoned coral. Is that one that I use? Yes. So I'm going to do abandoned coral with my foam blender, and yeah, let's just stick with one color because that'll just be easier. I've got my watercolor paper, and because we're playing, let's cut it in half so we can try a couple different things. Just going to cut this down to 2 3/4. But if you've got scraps of watercolor paper handy, by all means, grab whatever you've got. And if not, just watch and we'll experiment and play. All right, so I'm just going to basically cover my entire piece of watercolor paper with my abandoned coral. Give it some good intensity. And just because I'm here, I've got the inks out, I'm going to do my other half too because I want to show you something different afterwards. All right. All right, so we've got 2 little pieces of watercolor paper, all nicely colored with our abandoned coral ink. Make sure that lid goes on properly. All right, let's start with one. I'm going to take my Moon and My Stars stencil. So my Moon and My Stars. I'm going to spritz it and spritz it and spritz it. Have your paper towel handy. And I'm running out of water. That's okay. I don't know if you can see. No, you can't. I'm just going to go but I had lots of nice beads of water on there. So gently press. And you can see, yeah, some of it is coming out on your paper towel, but that's okay. Let it sit for a second. Let it do its magic. And you can, if you find that it's not working as well for you, try to leave it on for a little bit longer. Wow, look at that. Oh, we got a little bit extra water down here. So maybe I had too much water in certain places. But look at that. I don't know. I kind of like that it's not perfect. It gives you that real pretty watercolor look. So that's just doing it with one color. Again, if you do more of an ombre look, and if you do different color contrast, it's going to give you a different look altogether. The next thing I'm going to show you, let me just clean that off, is if you have a baby wipe handy. And I did try this on my Nina paper, but with the Nina paper, getting it wet and trying to rub with it, it kind of pulled the paper apart. So I wasn't as thrilled with it, the results, but I thought as the person commented, maybe watercolor will work better. I just didn't have my watercolor paper at home last night. So now my stencil is dry. I am going to lay it down on top of it. If you want, you can use your pixie spray, or I'm just going to use a little bit of purple tape just to make sure it doesn't move on me. And if you have a baby wipe handy, that's what we're going to use next. So remember, these inks react with water. I won't talk over, oops, dropped something, no worries. So now I've got my baby wipe. Oh, I've got two, that's okay. And I'm just gonna lightly dab in those openings and just give it a little bit of a rub, because now you're gonna start pulling that color out where the stencil was. Again, it looks like you have to be really gentle because it is pulling at the paper a little bit. So that's up in the top section. I don't have any water. You could also try just spritzing it with the stencil on as a mask. Yeah, I'm not in love with this. I don't like that it's pulling at the paper, but I have seen Mr. Tim do this. So it might just be that I'm doing something not quite right, but that's what playing and being creative is all about. So when you lift it up, now you've got the reverse of what you did here. So it is pulling the color out where the stencil was and leaving the ghosting behind with your solid background or your more intense color as your background. So there you go, ladies. Just a fun little technique with just some water and some stencils and your oxide inks. I encourage you to keep playing and try some different things. If you create something you are super excited about, please post it in the Inner Circle group, because we love seeing what everybody else comes up with and learning from each other. You know, there's lots of stuff out there and we all know different tips and tricks. So I'd be happy to learn from what you guys create with and what you learn through experimenting. You can see even as this one has dried, it's become a lot more intense too. So sometimes you just have to let it. This one too, you can see it a lot better than when it first got lifted, though the camera's not doing it justice. So there you have it, ladies. That is our Saturday morning mini Zoom. I hope you have a fantastic day. Play with all kinds of different color combinations of your oxides. If you're stumped, I just went on Pinterest and Googled Distress Oxide color combinations. If you have a special color that you want to include in that. So this one, because with speckled egg is the new color, I typed in color combinations speckled egg. Be careful, make sure you spell it the American way though. You'll get a lot more hits if you spell color without the U. So that one there, you know, this is a color combination I love, but I didn't have those colors. I've tried this one. That was that first one that we used. And I don't have evergreen boughs, so I didn't try that one either. But that Pinterest can give you tons of different color combination ideas, or just wing it, because that's what creativity is all about. All right, ladies, have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Please feel free to stop by the store. We are open today from 12 noon until 4. We will be open again next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 12 noon until 4. We're limiting it to a maximum of 3 adults in the store, 3 adult customers on top of our family. And please wear a mask when you come. All right, take care.
Thanks, Sheri.
Thank you, Sheri.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sheri.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.